All right, tell me when you're ready.
Whenever.
Okay, so let's talk about the research.
Okay.
Let's talk about what we can learn from the most important cases.
Okay.
Okay? So the first Supreme Court case that's important is Crawford. And really the only thing we learn from Crawford is this very general test. And that is that it violates the Confrontation Clause when the jury gets to hear an out-of-court statement. If the out-of-court statement was testimony.
Yes.
Okay? Now there are two exceptions to that, or actually there's one exception to that. If the witness is unavailable and the defense had an opportunity to cross-examine the witness beforehand, but that's not our case. So that's all we need to know from Crawford is it violates the Confrontation Clause if there's an out-of-court testimonial statement that the jury hears. Okay? So, now, what's the next case that matters?
Davis.
The defense, right?
Davis.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, we learned from Davis what it means to be testimonial.
Okay, yeah.
And what it means to be testimonial is a statement's primary purpose was to provide information for use at a future criminal trial.
Yes, sir.
Okay? So that's what we learned from Davis. Davis gives us two examples of what that might or might not look like. Somebody makes a statement to the police. That is probably a primary purpose for use at a future trial. Like that's why you give police information. Like Dimitri committed the murder. I'm telling the police that so they can use that in their trial.
Yeah.
But Davis also says if you say something like that to the police in the middle of an emergency, then your prime purpose is not to provide evidence for use in a future trial. It's just to like prevent imminent danger during that emergency.
Yes.
So if I call 911 and say, oh, I'm being attacked, come help. I'm being attacked by Dimitri, come help. I'm not trying to provide evidence for use for a future trial. It's not my primary purpose. My primary purpose is just to resolve the emergency. So that's all Davis tells us. Okay? Davis basically says, here's the prime purpose test. Now, there are 3 Supreme Court cases that apply that primary purpose test to forensic reports. So these are going to be where we get most of our rule explanation from.
Okay.
Because that's what we have here, forensic report. The first is Melendez-Diaz, and the second is Bulkaming, and we can basically treat them as the same. In both of those instances, law enforcement asks a forensic scientist to run near the defense, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, to run a report, to conduct a report. And that report gets written up and used at trial. And I think in both of those instances, it's a government agency that does the report.
So I gotta look that up, but I know at least at one of them.
I think it is, like the blood alcohol test and the cocaine test. I think it's probably done by like the whatever.
Whatever's with them.
What do we learn from Melendez-Diaz and Bulkaming? We learn that we basically learn that you treat a forensic report the same as a human statement. And so just as if there's a human statement that is requested by law enforcement for the purpose of providing evidence at a future trial, just as that is testimonial, so too a forensic report that's requested by law enforcement and whose primary purpose is to provide evidence at a future trial. So that's what we learned from Melendez-Diaz, the cocaine test, and Bulkaming, the blood alcohol test. Now, the last one of the Supreme Court cases is Williams, and Williams confuses things a little bit because Williams says that there's a forensic test out there that was requested by the government that's not testimonial. Why not? Well, one reason is that there was no suspect at the time of the test. Another reason is the report was not done by the government. It was a private contractor lab. But that's basically what we learned from Williams. Now I basically explained the rule. And so from an objective perspective, what do we learn from these 5 cases? We learned that you can't admit a testimonial statement and that a forensic report requested by the police counts as a testimonial statement unless there was no suspect at the time of the report. Okay. Now, from the, how will lower court opinions inform that? You don't have to use a lot of lower court opinions, but there is this case called Ignasiak.
Yep, which is good for us.
And there are some other ones on the state level, but at the very least Ignasiak. And what Ignasiak says is an autopsy report is like that, is like the reports in Melendez-Diaz and Volkman. Their primary purpose is to provide evidence for use in a future trial. Okay, so that is the primary purpose test. And in terms of how I would structure it, well, let's just forget structuring in the brief for a second. Just in terms of the research, does that content make sense for the primary purpose test?
Yes.
Did you feel like you were there already?
Yes.
Okay, well then, see, you said you didn't do good research, but you did.
Okay.
So maybe it's not that you didn't do good research, maybe you just need to believe in yourself.
Okay.
What I would suggest is don't try. Do you have any time between now and Wednesday afternoon?
All the time.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
sounds
don't
good.
try to write the argument section yet.
Okay.
Instead, try to write the topic sentence for each paragraph of the argument section. Primary purpose, rule explanation and application, formality explanation and application, surrogate explanation and application. And I'm going to guess primary purpose explanation will have 4 paragraphs. I'm going to guess its application will have 3. That's 7. I'm going to guess that formality will have 2 explanation and 1 application. These are just guesses, but that would bring you to 10. And then surrogate, 2 and 2, that brings you to 14. So I'm going to guess your argument section will have about 14 paragraphs.
Okay.
And so what I would encourage you to do between now and Wednesday is just write 14 sentences.
All right. Yes, sir.
The topic sentence for each of those paragraphs.
You
And
know.
then bring those in on Wednesday, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Right, 14 sentences, topic TS for each paragraph. You know what that reminded me of? Have you ever played the game Spades, the card game?
Yeah,
And
I used to. My wife taught me how to play spades.
Really? Yeah, I played it a few times, right? But when you're at the beginning and you're guessing how many you have.
Oh yeah, you're bidding, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what that. So you made a good guess because you're an
We'll
expert
see.
at this. All
Um,
right.
Okay, I think that's doable, and I think that my guess is that your topic sentences are going to be right on money, because I think that you really do know the substance, and it just is daunting to get all the way to a full brief from not a full brief. So do this kind of baby step, and then assuming that you're on the right track on Wednesday, then we'll talk about how to how to add support to each of those 14 paragraphs.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, thank you.
You bet.
I laughed too because I know you've been doing this all day.
Well, actually, I started late today.
Okay.
I had a couple presentations earlier in the day, and then I started this around 3:30.